So one thing I've been doing since I graduated university has been traveling a lot more. There's so much I love about traveling, and I actually even made a video about why you should solo travel that you can go check out. But there's something that you get when you go to a new place, a new country, and experience new culture and meet new people that you really can't get doing anything else. Now, a lot of people I know wonder how I can afford to travel so often. Just this year, I've already been to 5 countries, and by the end of this year, I've planned to have been to about 8 or 9 different countries. A lot of people might think that I'm rich, or I have a rich family, or I have a lot of money, but that's not really the case. I mean, I have a job and I work in the finance and accounting field, and it's a remote job, but I don't really make crazy amounts of money doing that. In this video, I want to talk to you guys about some money saving tips, ways to budget, and ways to find deals, and that way you can travel around the world for the least amount of money possible. This video is really meant for the people who want to travel around the world and try to travel to as many countries as possible and maximize the amount of times that they can travel in a year. So the number one thing is to do your research. Now, this might seem obvious to most people, but it's good to reiterate it. When I talk about research, for example, when you're booking your flight, you should be checking out multiple websites. For me personally, I like to use Google Flights and Cheapo Air. These are the two I personally like to use, but you can obviously check multiple other sites. My recommendation is actually to turn on the tracker. So on Google Flights, you can track the price of the flights, and that way you can really just see what the price is going to look like over time, and you can get it when it's going for a low price. Also on Google Flights, you can also see a graph of historical prices for the same flight that you're looking to book. That way you can tell around what range would be a good range where if you saw it at that price, you should go and buy it. Another thing is just to try to be savvy with the flights you're booking. For example, one thing that you can do is book 2 one-way flights instead of a round trip. Another thing is to just go to nearby airports. If you live in a big city like I do, there's actually 2 major airports, so I always check both airports to see which one has a better price. Also, there are multiple major airports near where I live within a 4-hour driving distance, so if the flights are significantly cheaper, I could drive to those airports. This also makes a lot more sense when you're living in a smaller city. Like I used to live in a small city where every flight I would take from that city would have to go to Chicago first, like a hub airport, and then fly from there to my location. And so that would make the flight more expensive. But if you live within a drivable distance to a hub airport, which basically means like a big city like New York, LA, Miami, Chicago, things like that, try to drive to those cities and then fly out of there because you'll save a lot of money. Another thing that a lot of people may or may not have heard of is called skiplagging. Now there's a site called skiplag.com where you can check, and a lot of times you can find really good deals. And basically what skiplagging is the following. Let's say I wanted to go from Denver to New York, and the flight was $300 round trip. But on Skiplag, you can find a flight that goes from Denver to Boston, but there's a layover in New York. And let's say that flight was only $150. Basically what skiplagging is gonna do is it's gonna show you those flights where the connecting flight is in the city that you want to go to. So for example, you could book that flight from Denver to Boston where the connecting flight is in New York, and then once you got to New York, you could just get off your flight and then you'd be in New York and you would have saved money rather than booking a round trip from Denver to New York, which might have cost more. Now, this is something that you can check out on the Skiplag website, but I definitely don't recommend trying this for like overseas or international flights. It's a little bit more sketchy when it comes to like visa restrictions and things like that. So I definitely recommend it if you're looking to do it domestically. Check it out, but with international flights, I'd say proceed with caution. Now, the number 2 thing is going to low-cost countries. Now, I know everybody wants to go to places like Rome, London, New York City. Personally, I would definitely want to travel to those places at some point, but I want to wait till I'm in a better financial state to go to those cities to really be able to enjoy it because of how expensive they really are. I think if you're trying to be on a budget and you're trying to maximize the amount of trips you go on in a year and try to go to as many places as possible, start with the low-cost countries. There's so many places around the world. For example, for me, like Mexico is very nearby, South and Central America, Southeast Asia. These are all great places to go to with rich culture, great people, great food, great things to see, great activities to do, and they're really not as expensive as a place like London or Paris or New York City. My 3rd tip is when it comes to staying places, stay at hostels. Hostels are a great way to cut down on expense. For those who don't really know what hostels are all about, basically their hostels are big rooms where you're gonna share the space with other people. So for example, I might be in a hostel room where there's 6 to 8 other people staying in my exact room, and we were all staying just in like bunk beds, and then we'd share the bathroom and shower facilities. By doing this, you're gonna save a lot of money on cost. Airbnbs and hotels these days the prices are going through the roof, and that expense of a trip takes up way too much money for some place that you're not even gonna be spending a majority of your time at. But when it comes to hostels, you're really only gonna be spending about $20 to $50 USD per night. So the costs come down a lot. Also, hostels are located in all major destinations. One site that I always use is ran by this guy named Nomadic Matt. He reviews hostels from all around the world, and he has great recommendations. This is what I use whenever I travel, and it's never led me astray, so definitely check that out. But when it comes to hostels, I know some people might have reservations when it comes to staying at hostels, but in my experiences, hostels are extremely clean, extremely friendly, extremely well staffed, and extremely knowledgeable, and the people who come and stay at hostels are always really good vibes. Obviously, for the price, you might think it's like the same vibes as like a cheap hotel, which is really looked down upon, especially in the US. Like cheap hotels have a really bad reputation and just a really bad vibe around them. But hostels are completely different, and if you have the ability to stay in a hostel, I definitely recommend you checking it out. One of the main benefits of hostels is meeting other people from all around the world. This has been my most fun experience, and the reason I always try to stay at hostels is because you meet people from all around the world, and they're, you know, in kind of the same traveler mindset as you, and you end up doing a lot of cool things and hanging out with them for a majority of your trip. Especially if you're solo travel, it can make your trip more fun and enjoyable. Just be around other people who also want to do the same things as you. Not only that, majority of hostels work with the local communities to get you really good deals on travel or tourist attractions. All in all, I definitely recommend you check out hostels, not only to save money, but also for the great vibes. Number 4 tip is you're gonna have to make sacrifices. Now, a lot of people think like vacation and traveling is going to be all just peaches and roses, and it can be if that's what you want to make it out to be. But like I said, this video is for the people who want to travel the world but want to do it on a budget and try to go to as many places as possible. You're definitely going to have to make some sacrifices if you want to ball on a budget. For me personally, I look at things like food. You know, I'm not a big foodie, which actually works in my favor, because when I go on trips, I don't really care about like, I have to go try this fancy 5-star restaurant that's super unique to, you know, this location. Like, I've heard so much about it. Like, I have to go, and then you end up spending like way too much money and the food isn't that great. So I really personally don't care too much about food. Generally, when I go, I try to get whatever's cheapest. Like cheese pizza is always super cheap, or, you know, sometimes at the hostels they'll have free food that other people left, so I'll get like a sandwich real quick. And for me, food is one thing that I can cut down a lot of my expense on. Another thing is like public transport. Try to stay away from Uber, especially if you're in places that is not the US. You can go most places through public transport, metros, buses, trains. It definitely is kind of confusing, at least for me, since I'm an American, I never use public transport. It is kind of confusing at first to figure out the system, like with the public transportation, but definitely just try to figure it out as soon as possible, because once you do it, it becomes so much cheaper. Recently, I was in Stockholm, and at first the bus system was kind of confusing to figure out, but one of my friends that I met at the hostel recommended I just use it, and I tried it out, and I realized how easy it actually was and how cheap it was. It was like under $1 per ride. So definitely just take the initiative to figure out the public transportation system. Another quick tip is getting student discounts. For people who are in university and you have a university ID, a lot of places around the world will still give you a student discount. I was actually surprised about this, but when I was in Portugal, they gave me a student discount even though I was a student in the US. Now, another thing is, you don't really even have to be a student. I graduated in 2019, but I still have my student ID, and it still works. Like, nobody's ever denied me a student discount because I'm no longer in university. They really don't care that much. So if you still have your university ID, bring it around when you go traveling, because you can get some discounts. Another thing is try to hit as many free activities as possible. Whenever you go to a new city, there's so many activities that you can visit just for free. There's this one site that I always use when I go traveling all over the world. I have it up right here, but there's a tab where it literally lists all the free activities. And for me, like I said, personally, I enjoy like the outdoors, nature, that kind of thing. And so a lot of those things are free anyway, like going to parks, or, you know, going hiking, or just going to see a viewpoint, things like that. they're gonna be free regardless, and a lot of museums can also be either free or super cheap. So those are the things I enjoy, and it happens to be low cost, so it works out well. But I definitely recommend you checking out all the free options that a city offers. Also, be wary of things that it seems that only tourists seem to be doing. There's a lot of attractions where if you talk to local people, they're like, oh, that's just like a tourist ploy. Like, no locals actually go and do that. In conclusion, traveling really does not need to be expensive if you don't want it to be. If you were able to follow these tips, you can really ball on a budget and go on trips around the world for a low cost. Me personally, my goal is to travel to as many countries as possible, and that's why I try to keep my expenses low on vacation, because I want to be able to travel to more places rather than just travel to 1 or 2 places and spend a lot of money at those places. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on these tips, and drop any other tips you may have in the comment section below. I'm always looking for new ways to save money, so drop that in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and made it to the end, please drop a thumbs up. Appreciate you guys. Until next time, peace.